Hey everybody, so I've been listening to a lot of Ali Farka Touré and Tina Rawan lately, kind of music from Mali and Tuareg music from Libya. So I'm going to show some of the scales that kind of sets this apart. So a lot of this music has a really bluesy sound, but it's also slightly off, so it sounds similar to American music, but slightly off. And that's really, a lot of times it's just a couple notes difference that makes that. So for this, to understand this, you should really know the minor pentatonic scale and be able to play it from a lot of different positions on the guitar. Because if not, it's going to be kind of tough to understand. So in this music, they do use, occasionally regular minor scale, major scale, and minor and major pentatonic. And of course, that sounds slightly different still because of the phrasing and the way they use the scales. But I'm just going to talk about the actual scales that are different now. So to start, as a kind of basis, I'll go through here's just the E minor pentatonic scale. So essentially, there are two notes in this that I'm going to change. The first one is the second note of this pentatonic scale, so G, right? So G here can be either G or F sharp in these new scales I'm going to introduce. And then the last note of the scale, D, we can make that sharp. So that can be either D or D sharp, right? So basically that think of each one of these notes can have two different versions, right? The second note of the pentatonic scale can be a half step lower, and the last note of the pentatonic scale can be a half step sharper. And of course, they can also just be how they are in the pentatonic scale. So basically, that gives us four different scales, right? 2 times 2. So one of these is just a regular minor pentatonic scale, right? So E, G, A, B, D, E, right? Now let's make this G flat. So make that F sharp. Right, so. So that's the first different scale that we can get, right? Now let's keep this G again, right? Keep it natural, and make the D sharp. So now we get the scale. Right. E, G, A, B, D sharp, E. Sorry. Right. And that brings us to the last scale, where both notes are in a different version. So here you flatten this G by a half step, and you raise the D by a half step. So you get. So let's say you already know the minor pentatonic scale, so that basically gives you 3 new scales to work with, right? So if you're sitting trying to figure out one of these melodies or improvising that style, these are the basic things that you should try out to see if it works. I'll talk a little bit about how they're used now. So one really common thing is to have this scale, like just use the E minor pentatonic scale on the high part of the scale, on the high octave, and then below the tonic, do this thing. So right. And then this little trill, kind of a blues, going to a blues scale. Right, the little mute. So I'm muting here with the left hand. Right. rhythmically, it's really common to, they have a lot of these really repeating riffs, so. Right. All these phrases that end in a kind of really quick muted note, so. And then this trill is also really common. Right, so basically there you're trilling on the G sharp. Right. But you're not actually playing it long enough to kind of make it part of the scale. So this is really similar to the kind of things that are done in blues guitar. It's just that some of the trills are different. Like some of the notes that they're kind of leaning on are different notes. So. Now we can move on to the scale where the second note of the pentatonic scale is flat. Where the second note is flat. So where we have F sharp rather than G. So. Right. So here, this really common trill is to actually trill onto the G. So from the F sharp. Right, and then also to use this, right, even if you're not actually in that scale. So to use the natural D here, and then D sharp on the lower part of the scale, right? This kind of slide. Again, really similar to blues guitar. So, I mean, the best way to practice this is just to listen to a lot of this music with the guitar in your hand. First, try and find the key, so find where the tonic is, and then try out these different scales to find which one they're in. Like I said, they could be in minor pentatonic or any of the three other scales that I showed, but they also use regular minor and major pentatonic, so it could be one of those two. And then once you're able to play along and you figure out what's going on, what you can do is usually they have a riff going on in the background and someone's soloing over it. So find the most basic riff and just try and play along to that. And once you learn it, you can turn off the music and just kind of keep playing that riff and try to play like one measure of the riff and then one measure solo, one measure riff, one measure solo, right? And then once you're comfortable with the scales, you can apply these other techniques that I showed. So the trills and this kind of this slide and this mute, right? All those phrasing. That really comes more from listening. You can't. I mean, it's harder to practice just by itself.